All right, here we are. Second part of our tutorial about VPT. Last time we talked about how to create layers and how to corner pin them, mask them and everything. If there are any questions regarding those techniques, please refer to the other first tutorial on this one. And now let's look at the controls in the second part. So there is a queue list that we talked about in the first part, and then there is a control router layout where we can add different controls to different parts of this arrangement that we are mapping here. So maybe let's concentrate on what we have as the opacity of the layers. So there's layer 1 and layer 2, and let's bind them to values. So in here we could theoretically bind a MIDI controller over the router to the fade value of that. So let's call this number 1, and as soon as we are moving the MIDI fader, which can be every MIDI fader in your system as long as it's connected to your system's MIDI structure, you can attach this function over the router by choosing what you want to control, in this case the layer, what you want to control as the functions. In this case, let's control red for example. So we're turning off red, it becomes all greenish, bluish, what is this, teal, I think. And you can route all these functions to certain other values. So MIDI, pretty straightforward. You have to create your MIDI channels and use the MIDI controls. There are many controllers out there where you can do these. Okay, let's turn this one off, get into the FLOs. Let's create an FLO that does this. It fades in, fades out. This is controller 1. Router takes control number 1. If I was to attach this to a layer 2, we would run it on layer 2. If I wanted it to be both, let's attach this to the layers red channel on layer 1. You get the concept. It's you're feeding in a control to this number and then you're routing it to certain functions of the layer. Now the LFO is controlling the red and green channels of those layers. There is another one that's called the ArtNet control. Everybody who does lights knows how ArtNet works. I'm not going to go into ArtNet too far because we need an ArtNet controller in a way, and I don't know if you have some light mixer that sends out ArtNet. So let's go straight into OSC, which is one of the most interesting ones. On an iPhone, I'm using Touch OSC, the latest version. And let's create a slider. So I'm going to add in a fader. That's kind of this size. Let's make it larger so you can see what's happening. And in the properties of this fader, we're going to call it, because this is what it's going to call as a string attached to the channel value of the OSC. And if you go into the manual of VPT8, you have to obey the rules that AC Gilje gave his program, because that's how it works. So we call it 1 layer, and then we add a slash and we call it fade. This will create let's delete the MIDI control because we don't need it. This will send /1 layer /fade and then the value X. So if we're going back, this will send this information. So we're now going into our OSC settings. So you have to send it to the IP of the machine that is running VPT8. Max is really careful about sending things to ports and using information that is on ports. You might have to use some information that tells you if your port 6666, you can have a look here. You can also look up the string, which didn't work. So you have to check if 6666 is in use. So if this happens, if there is a process attached to it, you should find out what this process is. So you copy the process number and you go into your task manager. Within the task manager, you go and find that process. And as you can see, there is several processes that use this port, and Max is really, really cautious about sharing this port. So let's have a look at what this is. And this is the Epic Games Launcher. So we end the task. And that's it. Now, if we control the value, you can see it's sending the value from our fader that we have here. Let's just, for the sakes of this tutorial, just create a second fader that does exactly the same thing. Whoops. But in this case, we're not sending MIDI, and we're calling it because it's calling the name that it is. This is the specialty of Touch OSC. So we call it 2-layer because we want to layer with an epsilon / fade. Now when we go back to running the whole thing, we have one fader that controls the opacity of one layer, and that's the other layer. So this is OSC working with your mobile phone and an app that is, I think it's a few euros. There is free apps, but I like this one because you can configure it yourself on, on the mobile. You don't need any computer with it. If you want to see more tutorials like this one, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be seeing you next time.